So the last time that Donald Trump was president of the United States, his Secretary of the Interior got embroiled in a corruption scandal and was referred to the U.S. Department of Justice for potential criminal prosecution. The last time Donald Trump was president, his Secretary of Transportation also got embroiled in a corruption scandal and was referred to the Department of Justice for potential criminal prosecution. The last time Donald Trump was president, his Secretary of Labor got embroiled in a disgusting scandal involving convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. A federal judge ruled that Trump's labor secretary had broken the law in that scandal, and so the labor secretary was referred to the Office of Professional Responsibility at the Justice Department. He ended up resigning in disgrace. Donald Trump's Secretary of Energy resigned in a corruption and ethics scandal. Donald Trump's head of the EPA resigned in a corruption and ethics scandal. Donald Trump's Health and Human Services Secretary resigned in a corruption and ethics scandal. And I mean, any one of these cases is like a teapot dome-sized scandal, right? Used to be if you had one cabinet official involved in a big ethics and or corruption scandal that forced them out of the job or led them to, to being referred for criminal prosecution, even if you just had one, that would be enough to brand your whole presidency a disgraced and scandal-ridden mistake. I mean, Warren G. Harding. What is remembered about the Warren G. Harding presidency? I mean, maybe you got three things you could remember. A, died in office. B, had an affair. C, teapot dome scandal. Corruption scandal, which resulted in a cabinet official being criminally charged. I mean, literally a century after that one scandal involving one cabinet official, that's basically all we remember about that guy's presidency. Because admit it, when I just said Warren G. Harding had an affair, you went, he did? You didn't even know that. We only remember that one scandal because it led to a cabinet official getting in trouble. One cabinet official getting in trouble in that kind of a corruption scandal used to be enough to mar your presidency and brand it alone for a century. The first Donald Trump presidential term had so many cabinet officials forced out of office in disgrace and referred to the Justice Department to face criminal charges. It's actually hard to remember them all. And of course, just one of the scandals of the Trump administration is that despite an unprecedented number of cabinet officials being referred to the Justice Department for potential prosecution, the supposedly independent Department of Justice under Donald Trump decided to bring charges, to actually bring criminal charges against precisely none of them, which is yet another of the Trump scandals from his first term, but still. I will also mention that one of the more memorable disasters, ethical disasters along these lines from the first Trump term was his Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And this one might be the most memorable because it happened right at the end. I remember the headline about it on our show blog. The headline about it was December 10th, 2020. So this is after Trump lost re-election to Joe Biden, but before the January 6th attack on Congress, before the inauguration. It was December 10th, 2020, and this was the headline. Yet another Trump cabinet secretary caught up in scandal. As Donald Trump's presidency comes to an ignominious end, it's apparently not too late for one more cabinet controversy. And that last one, it was the Secretary of Veterans Affairs. And he, too, like so many of his colleagues in the Trump cabinet, he, too, was referred to the Justice Department for potential prosecution. An investigation happened into claims that he had tried to discredit a veteran who said she had been sexually assaulted at a VA facility. The VA Inspector General investigated those allegations, found evidence that he seemed to have broken the law. They referred him to DOJ to be prosecuted. And of course, the Trump Justice Department did not prosecute him. They didn't prosecute any of these guys. But one of the things that was really memorable about his scandal is that more than 20 different veterans groups rose up in outrage against that guy. And these were disparate veterans groups with very different takes on the world. Everybody from the American Legion to Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America to the Veterans of Foreign Wars, they all demanded that this VA secretary resign or be fired. Even a really, really conservative pro-Trump veterans group just railed against this guy. he was embroiled. It was just a disaster. I mean, it was a sign that even right up to the very bitter and ultimately very violent end of Trump's term in office, things were just bad. It was a bad presidential term. It is not normal to have a half dozen members of the cabinet referred for potential criminal prosecution for crimes they allegedly committed while they were serving in the cabinet. It's not normal. I mean, that's the kind of thing that gets you listed repeatedly as the worst or among the worst ever presidents in U.S. history when presidential historians and scholars are surveyed about these things, right? This is why Trump is considered by experts in the field to be, if not the worst, then certainly one of the worst presidents in the history of the United States. I'm sorry, Warren G. Harding. It just wasn't good. Today is Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day. Veterans Day is a celebratory day. It's not to be confused with Memorial Day, which is a very somber occasion. Memorial Day, we remember service members who gave their lives for our country. Veterans Day is a happy day. It is a celebration of our nation's veterans, a time to say thank you and to just pay some attention to their service and their pride in their service. Basically, as a country, Veterans Day is a day to lift up our service members and our veterans. And I therefore try not to do bummer veterans news on Veterans Day. But today the news is that Donald Trump, for his second presidential term, has brought back that guy, that last cabinet official with the last scandal, the guy who was referred for criminal prosecution right at the end of Trump's first term in office after a scandal-ridden tenure at the VA. And this time, Trump has brought that guy back to lead Trump transition efforts for the entire military, for the entire Defense Department. Former VA secretary, who was referred to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution at the end of his term, to lead Trump's Pentagon transition efforts. At a time when the United States of America is looking to the U.S. military for assurances that they won't deploy against American civilians the way Trump has threatened he will order them to do. The guy who's in charge with staffing up the Defense Department leadership for the military, making sure we've got all the best, most ethical people there. It's the guy who left office last time under Trump while his, quote, possible criminal conduct was under investigation by federal prosecutors. Good times. There's been a flurry of announcements and news about Trump staffing up for his second term in the past 24 hours. He really is bringing back that guy to choose the staff and leadership of the U.S. Defense Department. It's just been reported by the New York Times that Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio, who once memorably cast aspersions on the size of Donald Trump's genitals in a presidential debate. The New York Times is first to report that Senator Marco Rubio will be Donald Trump's choice for Secretary of State. NBC News has actually just confirmed that news as well, just in the last couple of moments. It is on the front page of the New York Times as we speak. Marco Rubio, the expected choice by Donald Trump to be his Secretary of State. We did learn for sure this evening that Trump is choosing for his national security advisor another Republican member of Congress, Congressman Mike Waltz of Florida. After Congressman Waltz helped in the effort to try to overthrow the U.S. government and keep Trump in power after he lost re-election in 2020, you might remember, this was an amazing Florida story, you might remember a very unusual apology being published by Congressman Waltz's hometown paper, the Orlando Sentinel. It was an apology to their readers for having endorsed Mike Waltz for re-election. They apologized for having endorsed him after he tried to help Trump overthrow the government. Mike Waltz has also distinguished himself by claiming that Trump was not responsible for January 6th. He also has proposed that Dulles Airport should be renamed Trump Airport. So clearly, Congressman Mike Waltz has checked all the boxes that he needs to be national security advisor in a second Trump presidential term. Today, we also learned that Tom Homan will be in a job that Trump is apparently calling border czar. Remember when Republicans used to maintain with a straight face that it was a huge scandal? It was evidence of communism to call anybody the czar of anything in the U.S. government? Well, Tom Homan will be Trump's border czar. Tom Homan is the architect of the policy that had the U.S. government deliberately and systematically taking little kids away from their parents and not giving them back. He also spent this interregnum period, while Trump's been out of office, barnstorming the country, bragging about how he's going to be the man who will mercilessly come after immigrants if and when Trump gets back into power.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
They ain't seen yet. Wait till 2025. Trump comes back in January. I'll be on his heels coming back, and I will run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen.
I'm sick and tired of hearing about the family separation. And I'm still being sued over that, so come get me. I don't give a right? I don't give a what anybody says.
Trump comes back, I come back. And I will run the biggest deportation operation this country's ever seen.
That last appearance there, it's worth pointing out, was Tom Homan, again, just appointed to be Trump's border czar for the second term. That was him speaking this year at an event called the Rod of Iron Festival, which was a quasi-religious event held by sort of a cult group. This is their leader. This is a group that literally worships assault rifles. And their sort of demigod leader who literally wears a crown that is made out of bullets. That cult event is the kind of event that Tom Homan has been speaking at this year, talking about mass deportations and how he'll run all of that when Trump's back in office.